Hi, everybody. I'm Kyle Lacotte, your host. Welcome back to another edition of VCTV. As I mentioned earlier, this is another double episode day and another double episode week. Every single day here on VCTV, we are bringing you double episodes to talk about everything that's happening. Because why? It's quarter three, third quarter, Q3, whatever you want to call it. This is one of the most important times of the year for those looking to raise capital and those looking to invest in companies. This is when you are sprinting towards the end of the year, launching products, getting products out into the hands of consumers, and getting that last little bit of funding in to last you the next year, year and a half. And then investors know that because of that, there's so many great companies that are fundraising during this time that they have to keep up to date. And so we bring you multiple episodes here on VCTV every single day right now because so much is changing from technology to industries and regions around the world. The pulse is doing nothing but increasing. So we've got a lot to cover. And today's topic plays into all of what I just said here in quarter three, and that is fundraising through social media. Okay, traditional routes of fundraising have expanded. We know that, we've talked about it. It's not just go and get one meeting with one venture capitalist and you get funding. No, there's so many different ways. There's so many different outlets. There's so many different ways to reach, connect, and communicate to meet new investors and also to increase your opportunities around the fundraising process. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So entrepreneurs, get your pens ready and your pads of paper to start taking notes. Entrepreneurs, or excuse me, VCs and investors, do the same. We're going to be talking about all of this, how it works, how it's not, right ways, bad ways, everything in between to make sure that you're prepared. And speaking of you in the audience, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're an investor that would like to jump on a show like today, share your thoughts, your insights about what's happening around the world in technologies, industries, and regions, we'd love to have you. Please reach out to the LATOKEN team, Elena, and or myself. We'd love to find the right topic. Entrepreneurs, it's not just a stage for our investors. This is also a stage for you. You get the chance, just like what we're going to be talking about today, to get up on the virtual stage and share and pitch your company to us as investors and to our live audience, a new form of fundraising. Stay tuned on that. And a big shout out and a thank you to Elena and to the entire LATOKEN team for always making VCTV possible multiple times a day, all around the world on your screen and your device, anywhere you may be tuning in. With that, I'm your host, Kyle Lacotte. Let's get started and introduce all of our investors and panelists here today to start unpacking this exciting topic. Alejandro, welcome to the show. First time with Elena and I here on VCTV. A little intro and a little background. Oh, you are on mute.
My bad. Thank you, Kyle. And pleasure to be here with you guys and the rest of the panelists. Alejandro Zelaya here, born and raised in Guatemala. I did my undergrad career in Bentley University up in Boston. So I think Jason will have similar thoughts on that end as me. And then I did my master's degree in Georgetown University. So I'm partner at Invariantes Fund, the very first early stage VC fund here in Guatemala and among the first ones in the region. And I think what makes us special, or I would say unique from other VC funds that you might heard of or know of, is that we have a hybrid model in the sense that 50% of our portfolio is invested in other VC funds, like a fund of funds, and the other 50% of our portfolio is invested directly in startups. So very much looking forward to the event and sharing some experiences and thoughts.
And Alejandro, for those that you do invest in on the startup side, what is the typical investment? Is there any particular industry that you focus on, range? What is just kind of the quick thesis for those that are tuning in?
Fundraising, Kyle, for our second fund, Invariantes Fund number 2. The first fund, was sector agnostic. We have companies such as Luminar that just announced their IPO last week, $3.4 billion, LiDAR system for autonomous vehicles. And then we also have another companies in the, hospitality sector, others, in the construction sector. So definitely sector agnostic. And just early stage. That's where the real game is.
Couldn't agree more, and congratulations on the public announcement as well. Jason, also welcome to the show. First time with Elena and I here on VCTV. A little intro, a little background.
Yeah, great to be here. I'm based out of Boston with EQX Fund, and we're an early stage mostly C to Series A investments, and pretty at the moment pretty split. Like it's industry agnostic, but pretty split between the biotech healthcare space and the technology industries. And we started off we started our first fund about 2.5 to 3 years ago. And our main focus is on the entrepreneurs. So, we have a large number of serial entrepreneurs coming back with their second or third ventures. We've gone into some corporate leaders from companies like Google and Pfizer, and then other startup founders. We really love what they've done with their business so far and invested in them because of it. And yeah, now we're finishing up like the last few investments on our first fund and starting to raise for our second fund.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on that. We'll be coming back to that here in just a moment. Keith, also welcome to the show with Elena and I here on VCTV. A little intro, a little background.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. Keith Sackheim, I'm the CEO of Antenna Group. We're an integrated marketing and public relations firm that services B2B clients in a few different practice areas. At least half of our clients are VC-backed companies. We've represented clients that from seed stage all the way through C and D rounds, through IPOs, now SPACs, which seems to be the flavor of choice these days for going public. We have clients using that kind of vehicle. And specifically around today's topic of fundraising through social media. Over the last 5 years or so, that's been a huge point of emphasis for our clients. We find it to be an extremely effective way of staying top of mind of investors, being able to segment audiences, within the investor community, and really kind of being able to gauge in a more scientific way in terms of what the feedback is. Anyway, so excited to be on the panel. Look forward to discussing more of these topics.
Absolutely, and we're excited to have you. Noble, welcome back as well. Happy Monday. A little intro, a little background. Oh, there you go.
Kyle, sorry about that. Yeah, happy Monday, guys. My name is Noble Dracone. I'm the founder of Dracone Capital Partners. I'm also an advisor for M Accelerator, which is kind of a incubator slash accelerator hybrid model that I've been working with Alessandro Mariantoni for the last, year and a half, 2 years. My background has been across the board. I've been an entrepreneur as well as been raising capital for the last 26 years. Right now, we spend a lot of time helping early stage and seed companies and pre-series A, either helping them find financing and or investing ourselves. And so it's a very exciting space. I'm happy to be here to talk about this topic.
Wonderful. And then Adrian, I see you jamming out over there. I know you're paying attention, but I'm calling you out. A little intro, a little background. Welcome back.
Hello, everybody. And again, thank you to LATOKEN for having me here for another round. My name is Adrian Niculescu. I live in UK and in Romania, and I'm involved. I'm wearing few hats, actually. I work for Faster Capital as a regional director in UK and Romania, as an angel investor for SAR Global Ventures, CMO EMEA for Cloudcoin Consortium, and also I'm involved as a mentor in Virgin Startups. By the way, almost 10 years ago, I did my first social media training, and actually I had my first social media job. My task was to sell 10,000 tickets for a festival in like 2 weeks. So I definitely trust a lot social media about fundraising, and there's a little bit of experience gained in those 10 years. Happy to be here.
Absolutely happy to have you. And gentlemen, thank you so much for joining in today. And I want to just start with where things are currently. Keith kicks it off as, how important fundraising through social media has become for his clients, but really how important it is for all of us. So talking about the current state of social media and where this is starting to go when it comes to fundraising, would love to hear each of your opinions and thoughts. Alejandro, let's start with you on the current state of things and how you see social media being such an important or not important role to the fundraising process.
Thank you, Kyle. No, I think it's become super important, especially after the pandemic, that face-to-face meeting, somehow it has diminished our ability to meet founders and even investors, but I think it's important to separate it in both ends, first of all, how important is fundraising on the startup side and how important is fundraising on the VC fund or private equity fund or company side, at least in my opinion, fundraising through social media for VC funds, it's a little bit more complicated. Your type of LPs are way too much elaborated and a little bit more, I would say, not conservative, but they want to make a little bit more of due diligence on your end, what is it that you really do, and have that face-to-face meeting to get to know you personally. But on the other end, fundraising through social media via startups, as Keith was saying, it's super important. I think it's just about to starting to ramp up. We have multiple cases, even companies from our portfolio have been fundraising through social media in the past 2-3 months, which is quite incredible. Just recently, for example, one of our companies, in the case of Kingo, which is, part of a family office, Kingo Energy, they install solar panels, in rural areas around Guatemala. They've been fundraising, through social media for the past 5 to 6 months, So my overall opinion, I think it's a trend that is actually starting to happen more than past years. It's actually gaining more force, and I think it's going to be definitely the new normality in the next couple of months for sure.
I think that's a good point. I think new normal is it's so integrated in our lives. How can it not be normal, right? Social media has been a part of our world for the past 10 plus years, depending on how you define it. So it's absolutely just a continuation of, or an evolution of that. Jason, to you, same question.
Yeah, so I think, there's several different categories you can fall into on the social media side. The main one, main source for us is LinkedIn. Met a lot of great founders and entrepreneurs through there, just connecting, with both their posts as well as mostly the direct messaging feature, getting to know startups and what they're doing on there. But like one example, one of our portfolio companies, MentorBox, is basically a subscription service for books and video lessons from authors. So I actually originally found out about the company through their Facebook advertising, signed up as a user, and then several months into being a user on the platform, I found out that they were fundraising, and it was started by serial successful entrepreneurs that really fit well with our fund structure, and what started out as a Facebook ad turned into an investment from our fund.
Wow. Oh, okay. So a new alternative, not just reaching out directly on messages, but also advertising as well. So Keith, to you, same question. What are you seeing as the current state of things and how this is all working?
Yeah, so there's definitely been, a change over the last few years, and that's really been driven by the evolution of LinkedIn. So LinkedIn did a great job of looking at Facebook and understanding exactly how they were able to monetize, their 3 billion or 4 billion users in the world of advertising. And what they've done is they've improved two things. One is the ability to segment out audiences now and micro-target those audiences is vastly improved in the last 2 to 3 years. So if you're a company in ag tech, for example, looking to raise a Series B, you can really segment out an audience of strategic investors, institutional, VCs, family offices, what have you. Do a search by geography, by size, by region, by interest, segment out that audience. And the second thing that they've really improved is their advertising products as well. So whether it's a piece of content you want to boost, whether it's an in-mail that you want to write, LinkedIn's expensive. Their pay-per-click is expensive. But in terms of being really strategic and micro-targeting the right audiences, they've done a fantastic job. And as a B2B marketing agency, I mean, that's a lot of what we do. So a lot of what we do now is, and this is kind of the second piece, is all these platforms are only as good as the content you're creating for your target audiences. And that's really, really important to keep in mind. And the number one thing that we emphasize right now is personalization of content. So the worst thing you can do is, if you're an ag tech company, right, and you're going to do this massive campaign to VCs, and you have a VC that focuses on fintech and gets your sponsored content that has nothing to do with fintech and those kinds of things. So it's inefficient, and ultimately it's counterproductive. So, those are the two things we're really seeing. It's the evolution of LinkedIn and being able to harness, their user base and their, functionality on behalf of startups. And at the same time, making sure that content is relevant and personalized and is going to move the needle in terms of that kind of communication.
You bring up a good point around content. I think that's something that's we've lacked around this conversation. Is it's not just about messaging one-to-one, right? And Jason, you brought it up too. There's advertising. There's so many different models and content, right? Keeping that content, and first off, producing it, personalizing it, and then keeping it consistent. There's so much value in that I think sometimes gets lost. Adrian, to you, current state, what are you seeing?
When I talk about social media, I also talk about the wisdom of the masses. And lately, I was looking at what happens with Uber. I believe there are some problems with people who invested in Uber before the IPO, and also I saw that some of the employees are not happy and they're suing the company. I don't want to get into details, just that I'm learning from social media what happens in the world. So I stopped watching the news from TV, and my network, and I'm applying a principle called the Dream 100, meaning that I follow on Twitter, on Facebook, or on LinkedIn, I follow the most important 100 to 200 people for my industry and for my interest. And what they are sharing usually are mostly the kind of information I want to dig in. So social media helps me a lot to curate the kind of information I want to learn about, and also to connect with the proper people. So I don't think that there is a cure for everything. It's a medium, but we simply can't live without social media, especially in the VC world. And also the good and the bad news are moving very fast through the social media. One share can transform into a PR problem, an image problem, or to help boost a stock or a coin or everything else. It's amazing that we are having social media.
Well, it's that additional form of communication, to your point, right? It's how we express ourselves, how we get our news, it's how we share content. And Noble, to you, continuing the conversation, same question.
We're kind of knee deep in doing a lot of stuff with social media. I had a successful Kickstarter about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, when we went to social media and really focused on how that works when you're finding people to pre-buy and get your products. I'm running a tech company. We have clothes that come to life. In the interim, we built a database of several 100,000 accredited investors, and we use that to interact with them through Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Right now, we're talking to our media team to start incorporating Snapchat in order to talk with them. And I think the reality is it's multiple levels when it comes to dealing with investors in that respect. What you're really looking for is, are you kind of sharing your branding message? Are you forcing a call to action? And what's the intent or end goal? The SEC just put out new rules this week talking about how they're changing what the idea of an accredited investor is. And with us, the way we consult people all the time, we explain that I think it was last year, $1.7 trillion was raised directly in the private placement market, utilizing oftentimes social media or direct connections like LinkedIn. So the idea of everything having to go to IPO in order to raise capital, or just having to go to a specific set to raise capital, whether it's just VCs or angels, that whole landscape bit by bit has been changing over the last actual decade with the advent of both Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Start Engine, Republic. You have more and more individual investors who are coming in through the doorways that, a couple of panelists have said, where they've seen an ad, realized that there was a model, bought the product, then turned around and became an investor. I did that multiple times on products that I've found on Kickstarter, products that I've found on Indiegogo. I've invested in several projects on Start Engine as well as WeFunder. I've invested in multiple rounds on Legion M just based on Facebook ads that they've put out showing what their thesis is, in which individuals can own the media that they produce. So I believe that nothing's really changed, except that now, because the rules have made it easier to advertise, promote, and market what you're doing. Because before you couldn't advertise a private placement. With the 506c ruling, you can. So now, with that being said, more and more individuals, both startups and even later stage companies, are finding that they can reach out and access direct investors. Let's be frank, there's $9 trillion sitting around in qualified plans and IRAs that can be rolled over into investment into your company. So if you're able to explain what your company does and then be able to sell a product, particularly if you're in a SaaS model, you're going to find investors who feel both confident on you promoting your product as well as being engaged in owning the product that they bought. So it's an awesome landscape to be in. And I think this has been the best time ever to be able to talk directly to both your investor and potential investors along the spectrum. And we all know, if you're a company that invests in early stage, or you like pre-series A, a company that advertises and markets themselves, and you can actually see that they're gaining customer and market share visually, you get more confident in being able to realize that they've found a problem solution set that works. And social media proves that in every instance. So I think it's there's a few companies now that I'm looking at that I've been constantly retargeted and re-added, that I've actually reached out individually to figure out if they're looking for capital, because maybe they weren't thinking about it before, but with the new rules and the way 506Cs are operating, getting on the ground floor on companies that are just pushing themselves. So like I said, there's just two sides. You either the raising capital side and targeting accredited investors, as well as companies that just do a good job of finding who's going to buy their product. And both those really open the eyes for investors.
Jason.
Yeah, I think no, I think those are all great points. And continuing off of that, I mean, the types of content we're looking at that they're pushing out it's content that shows this is a great company. It's not content that says like we're a startup that needs funding right now. It's just, this is a great company. People are going to buy our product or use our service, and gets investors excited about it. And then they can see that, there's an opportunity to get in now versus just a company promoting that, or a company blindly reaching out and saying, we're looking for funding. Gives some level of comfort when you do make that connection with them, that you've seen it and heard it before, and it's something that you can get behind as an investor.
Yeah, and I want to, from all that you said, I want to touch on another point, and that's what to do, what not to do, kind of the advice portion of this, because we've talked about a lot of different opportunities, right? You can create content, you can go out there and do advertising, you can do special messaging, but really, what's the advice to those that are looking to fundraise when using or leveraging different types of social media? I mean, what advice do you have for those, what they should do and what they should not do as well? And Keith, I want to start with you. I mean, you've got a lot of experience in this, working with many of your clients and customers. What advice do you have for those to do and not to do when fundraising through social media?
Yeah, well, first piece of advice is make sure that attorneys review every single piece of content that goes out. So that's my first piece of advice. Marketing professionals like myself and my agency are always going to be very aggressive in terms of trying to engage target audiences, and whether or not that works from a regulatory perspective is not our domain. So make sure that attorneys review everything. But in general, look, what works is there are three things in general, like in this business, that you have to understand, right? One is who you're targeting, who the target audience is. So you got to make sure that you are defining what types of investors are really going to be, open and interested in your message and willing to engage. So that's kind of audience. Then you really have to understand in general when you market, both for sales and for investors, right? Like what differentiates you, what your value proposition is. And that all goes into messaging. So you got to have a really cogent message that you feel is going to resonate with the target audience, which you've defined. And then, of course, what connects the two is a platform. And platforms can be, depending on the company and what kind of investors they are, or what kind of people you're selling to, organizations you're selling to. That may be social media platforms. It might be just paid search, maybe traditional media, could be marketing automation, could be email drip. I mean, there's so many different kinds of platforms that one can harness, but the platforms become irrelevant if you don't understand your audience and you don't understand your message. You haven't defined that properly. And we find that probably the pitfalls or quagmires that companies fall into the most is ironically not understanding their value proposition, not understanding what message is going to motivate investors, and the audience piece, which is not really understanding who they're marketing to. Obviously, later stage, a Series C, Series D, those problems typically are alleviated. If you've gotten that far, you know who your audiences are and you know how to differentiate yourself. But for earlier stage investors, I think that becomes a huge problem. And overall, I think companies need to look at using social media to generate investment no different than they would for sales. People call it the sales funnel, right? So you're trying to get people to the top of the sales funnel, which is initially engage them. Then you're trying to nurture them throughout the sales funnel process, and then you're trying to convert them. For our clients, we call it the investor funnel, because it's really, in terms of methodology, no different. We have to get investors to the top of the funnel, make sure that they're aware and engaged, nurture them through different parts of that sales process to get investment, and then convert them actually into investors. And I think companies sometimes don't understand that analog as well.
Those are great points. Alejandro, go ahead.
Yeah, I think just following on what Keith said regarding the stages, I think companies need to be super aware what type of investor you're targeting and at what stage. Just as Keith mentioned, obviously if you're raising a Series B, C, or D, you know who your audience is, you know who your investors are and who your potential investors are going to be. But if you're raising on an early stage, at least for us, imagine us being here in Guatemala City, we just don't have that face-to-face meeting with founders, so we base a lot of our research and due diligence on cross-references from another VC funds, which is super important. Just recently, our latest investment, Binovest, the founder, Anthony Sang, we were recently introduced to the company through Hustle Fund. Then, we started the due diligence with the founder, just obviously via Skype and Zoom, given the current times. Then we had the chance, to speak with 1517 Fund as well from San Francisco to ask for referrals. And suddenly, Long Journey Ventures, with the partner over there being Lee Jacobs, he said, listen, guys, put attention to what this founder is doing, But my point is that founder obviously knew our network of investors, and he put on a good work for himself. And we also did cross-references on him. So what Keith was saying, if you're raising on a seed round or early stage VC rounds, it's super, super important to know who your target audience is, because at the end, if you're targeting and just spraying and praying for investors, it's very likely that the majority of answers you will receive are just no's. You need to know who the other VC funds are working, who you're targeting, and specifically if actually the VC fund is deploying capital or not, because many times, I think the overall industry needs a little bit more of transparency nowadays, because if you're not actively investing and you're receiving deal flow and, pipeline is robust and very complete and so on, you need to be straightforward with these entrepreneurs and these companies, up to the point that tell them, listen, guys, I love your product, but you're targeting the wrong investor at the moment. You need to make due diligence on us as well, the same due diligence that we do on yourselves. I think it's super important.
Absolutely, Jason.
Yeah, that's a great point as well on, doing your homework and due diligence on the investors. And, if an investor is promoting, or all of their content they're pushing out on LinkedIn or Twitter or other channels is about like biotech companies. I'm not going to send my you know, cryptocurrency company their way. And if somebody else is promoting blockchain startups and technology, maybe I'll reach out to that investor on LinkedIn, like tell them I love all the content they're promoting, you know, give them a share and help them out on their content side, and then reach out to them and let them know about what I'm doing as a startup. And sort of, you know, looking at the content the investors are pushing out, getting involved as much as you can on that side before you actually make that outreach, I think helps a lot.
Noble. Oh. All good. Adrian, let me come to you while Noble working it out.
Actually, when you're raising funds, you are selling an idea, and it's a sales process. How it was mentioned earlier, we are talking about the investor funnel. And especially when a company is at the beginning, you don't have stats about that company. So you are actually selling an idea. You are selling something which may happen or not in the future. And it's very important to define, as you define the ideal buyer persona, you define like the ideal investor profile you want to target. And when you are selling that idea, you are using marketing techniques, you are using copywriting, you are using certain triggers in the pitch deck, in all the materials to start some emotions which will make people to say, okay, I like this company, I will invest in it. My advice is, and this is very tempting for us marketers, because when we are defining correctly our target market, we know the psychological profile, we know what people have as worries, as fears. So sometimes we know about the target market more than the people know about themselves. And my advice is always to use this power in an ethical manner. So don't try to hype, because when you are using hype, usually you will sell more. You will get more people interested, and even investing. But in many occasions, will not be the kind of people you want to have as investors, because if you will lure them with facts that may not transform into reality, you may have a lot of complaints, you may have a lawsuit or something like that. So don't try to lure them and to present things too good to be true, you know, because if this happens, usually there is something fishy there. So try to use the marketing, use the words, use the copywriting, but also think at the business essentials, and try to offer a clear perspective about your projects to be able to attract the ideal type of investors, and also you to remain on the safe side about false promises. This is my advice here.
Noble.
Yeah, I think companies need to know who they, you know who you are as a founder. I started a tech company. I've started a communication company in the past. And now we're dealing with founders, and it's so easy to make the assumption that if you have just the right pitch deck and you have the right wording, then all of a sudden the funds are going to come. But the reality is, everyone wants to see authentic people who are selling to an authentic audience. And I think that a lot of the, to Adrian's point, a lot of the hype, people are just burnt out on it. If you really believe in your product and understand that people invest in people, yeah, we want to see the numbers. We want to make sure that there's some substance behind it. But you have to just, at the end of the day, it's the most silliest thing to say, but it's the honest thing. You have to be yourself. And that incorporates you knowing who your audience is and knowing what the self of the audience is and who you're selling to. I believe that most people who are selling a concept or an idea, which is great. I've sold from stocks to bonds to private placements for 26 years. We've always sold ideas, but the reality is, are you selling something that people want, and you believe in that, the thing that you're selling? So I tell people that I love to see some form of an MVP. It doesn't have to be the final model. It doesn't have to be the final item, but on the path to having at least your minimum viable product that has some kind of feedback is the way to move me off the button. That's why I really like when people have already spent the money in advertising. We test markets for some of the companies we work with for $5 and $10 a day to target and find audiences before we ramp up. So even seeing companies that are actually making the effort to find out who their audience is and who they're actually targeting, and then have some deliverable of a small MVP, makes me all the more confident that there's some scalability there. Companies that just sell the idea, then at that point, they have to really be a strong and solid founder. I was speaking to another accelerator just yesterday on the show, on my show, and we were talking about how there's so many people who have, I have the next best thing that's going to be the next unicorn, and a year later these guys have disappeared. You're like, oh great, you told me, it was a great idea, I liked it, but they were so focused on achieving this $1 million or $5 million, $10 million raise that they didn't even make a $30,000 investment in their business. And so just to get the MVP going. So I always like to see companies that skin in the game is almost kind of pedantic. It's not just skin in the game, that you really believe in what you've done and that you can create something that I can visually see that we can build upon. If there's no, I'm a writer, I've written several books. We come down to one simple statement: in order to write, you have to have a manuscript. The writing comes down in the editing, not in the creation. And so I always like to see companies that start.
Absolutely. So guys, we're coming up to the lightning round. So we want to get to just one more question for each of you as we come to this. And that's what of all the platforms out there, I know they're a little different based on what your needs are, but what's the preferred platform? If you're going to give someone their first platform to begin on, what is the preferred platform? And as I come to you, also your closing thoughts, and then where can everyone find you as well as we come to close. So Adrian, let's start with you. Preferred platform, any closing thoughts, and then where can everyone find you online?
My preferred platform is LinkedIn, by far LinkedIn. And it replaced almost everything else. The second one is Skype, and the third one is Facebook in terms of communication. My closing thoughts: go back to the basics when building something. Think about the business. Use all the words, all the copywriting, all the marketing in an ethical manner, and you will be fine. And as was mentioned, always bet on people, because if an idea, if a business has the possibility to fail, if the team is good, if the people are ethical, they will pivot, they will find a way. Thank you very much. And
Jason,
of course, people can find me on LinkedIn. Sorry, you can search my name, Adrian Niculescu, and I will be happy to respond to any questions and to connect with everybody. Thank you again.
Wonderful. Jason.
Yeah, same thing. LinkedIn's definitely the preferred channel. And yeah, happy to connect with new people, entrepreneurs there. And I also have a personal site, just jasonkraus.me, that has a little bit more information and some contact. My other social media channels there as well. And then I'd say also, like, for all the entrepreneurs out there, like, to look into more of the startup community platforms. Like, there's plenty of great Slack groups, or Mighty Networks is a big one, that has like specific channels and other initiatives that are led by like a group of startup communities that you can join in and use as a more direct social media platform as well.
Wonderful. Noble.
Yeah, it's easy to get a hold of me, Noble Dracone, on LinkedIn, or you can do Twitter. My last name, Dracone, at Dracone. Yeah, my preferred has always been, for years, LinkedIn. I mean, you find a lot of real people there. But when we did our Kickstarters, we focused 100% on Facebook because it's a retail marketing space. So I think that you just kind of find your preferred niche based on who you're trying to target and where you're at. So those are the two because they're just well aggregated between LinkedIn and Facebook.
Wonderful. Alejandro.
I will switch gears a little bit here, guys. My favorite one by far, WhatsApp. You know, once we have connected, for me, it's super important, you know, to have that short conversations via WhatsApp, not only with our investors in our VC funds, but founders as well. You know, that's the reality. You know, I need to get to know them, even from the profile picture that they're showing, you know, all the way how fast they're responding and so on, and having that small connection with them. You know, it's something that has worked for me in the past. You know, I've known a bunch of founders via WhatsApp that I still connect with them. I think email, you know, once Monday morning, I'm sure all of us, you know, after this conversation, we'll have a pile of emails. Couple of them we're going to read it, others we won't, you know, but WhatsApp is right there. You know, I have WhatsApp in my desktop. So for me, WhatsApp by far. You guys can find me on LinkedIn as Alejandro Zelaya, Z as in zebra. And my closing, you know, argument, given the current state of social media and fundraising over there, it's a reality. It's just the new normal, you know. But first of all, you need to get to know your investors beforehand. You know, you just can't be spraying and praying, hopefully that one of them will, you know, will say yes, and you will connect with them, and he or she or the fund is going to write you a small check or a big check, you know. And I want to stay, you know, with what Keith said at the beginning. You know, it all depends on the stage in which you are fundraising. You know, it's not the same to be fundraising via social media at a later stage when you already know, you know, have product market fit, you already know your customers or investors. But at an early stage, you know, you need to be targeting those specific funds that focus on your industry and area of expertise. So that's my closing argument, guys.
Wonderful. Thank you. Keith, close us out.
Great. Yeah, so listen, LinkedIn is definitely the preferred social network, but before LinkedIn, your website is actually your most fundamental and important platform. And that's just how people conduct their initial due diligence in any company today. So make sure your website, again, addresses the right audiences with the right message. Once you have that as a foundation, then LinkedIn is where you want to go to start, you know, trying to engage people and then bring them to your website. Just one piece of advice or kind of parting comment. Category is so critical in raising money. And what I mean by that is, you know, there are certain times, like for example, right now we do a lot of work in the mobility space, right? So any company that's involved in autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles is gonna get significantly higher valuations than if they were in different categories. So for example, if you're a company that's doing some type of radar, and that radar is part of the tech stack for mobility, for, you know, an OEM or for tier one. You could put yourself in industrial tech. You could put yourself in aerospace. You could put yourself in a lot of different categories. But why? Put yourself as, you know, your message needs to reflect the mobility category, because that's going to enable you to raise the most money at the best terms. And we have dozens of examples over the years as certain industries get hot and others cool off, how one can take their same technology, the same value proposition, but couch it within a certain investment category and reap the rewards of that. And you can reach me at antennagroup.com, Keith Zackheim. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter. Look forward to being in touch, and thank you for having me today.
Wonderful. And thank you all so much for joining us today. And to those that are listening in the audience, you heard it here first. You know what to do, you know what not to do. The investors here have shared everything that they know around this, and probably a little bit more they've got tucked away that you can reach out and continue the conversation. They all have shared their social media. So to Alejandro's point, reach out, build the relationship, get to know them, get to make sure that they're the right person for you to be continuing the conversation with as well. With that being said, we'll be back here tomorrow with another double edition of VCTV. But before we go, a big thank you to you, our audience, for tuning in today. If you like what you heard, click subscribe down in the corner, give us a thumbs up. And if you'd like to be on a show like today, please do reach out to Elena, to the LA Token team, and or myself. We'd love to find the right spot for you. Entrepreneurs, again, this is a stage for you. Please do reach out. We'd love to have you pitch not just us as investors, but to the live audience. As Alejandro and rest of our speakers and panelists have mentioned, this is the new platform. This is a new way of social media to connect. Thank you, Noble, to get out to those investors similar to Keith and Adrian as well, and Jason and Noble have mentioned additionally as well. And a big thank you to Elena and to the entire LA Token team for making VCTV possible every single day for you. That being said, we'll be back here tomorrow with another double episode and double episodes all week for you on VCTV. I'm Kyle Ellicott. You can find me at Kyle Ellicott on all social media, and we'll be back here tomorrow. Take care, everybody.